Good
evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order tonight for the Library Advisory Board. The minutes were sent out. Does anyone have any questions regarding the minutes?
I have one correction.
Okay,
On the bottom of the first page, it's WVCC. And the Friends of the Library, the Friends received a check.
Oh, yes.
3,000. Thanks.
anyone have any other questions? Okay, would someone like to approve the minutes as amended?
I will, I make a motion that we approve the minutes as amended.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Denise. Okay.
You have to vote.
Oh, let's vote for, is it everyone in does everyone approve of the minutes? Aye. The minutes are approved as amended. Okay, the next item is under public comment, and I wanted to insert here 2 items that were received after the agenda went out. So I want to put them under the public comment section because it's not an additional agenda item. The first I would like to talk about is an email I received from Gail Elizabeth, who's the president of the Friends of the Library, but she sent this as a citizen of Canby. I will read it. I'll read the questions and we can address the issues that are brought up. The first one is when myself and Lois addressed the city council in November, which was the city council meeting where the Library Advisory Board presented our annual presentation to the city council. It said, I remember you mentioning a library advisory board project for increasing library cards among students. And she said, I'm assuming the elementary and middle school, but we were referring to the high school project that Luke had been working on. So would it be helpful for the Friends to co-sponsor with the board a contest, perhaps one contest for the most new cards issued by school or other classroom, and another contest by most visits or books checked out using a punch card or other kind of tally sheet? So these are some ideas. I would like to know if someone would like to take on this challenge and work with the Friends of the Library and maybe see if we can work with some school like the elementary and the middle schools. And Luke will be working at the high school regarding this. And Luke, do you think that it would help?
I do, yeah,
okay.
I think so.
Okay. I can have I'll forward this to the Friends of the Library and have them give you what you think would be a good like contest kind of thing, so that we could give out gift cards and whatnot.
Susie, I apologize for interrupting. I just learned about something that may make this whole process unnecessary. The county is actually looking at a process that Washington County already did, where all of the schools' data systems are synchronized as far as the students with hours, and everyone in the school district gets a card. It's called a student card automatically.
Oh,
So
nice.
that is something that the directors just looked at and said, please get us more information from the committees that are working on it, as well as the county being able to support it. We don't know for sure if it's doable yet, but it's definitely coming.
Okay.
They're working on that. So it might just be something that's a timing thing, but something that's coming.
Okay.
So I had a comment about that too, because I actually noted to ask this question. So a few years ago, before COVID, when life was normal, the library actually did a thing with the schools in Canby where I think a 2nd grade came for a few hours, and it had happened over a period of a couple of different days. Marissa, do you remember this? Or was that before your time too?
I think it might have been the transition. period
Yeah,
coming up.
because it was a while ago, because, you know, the Canby Center does the Reading Mentor Program, and then they were involved, and a bunch of people. So before we agreed to do something like that, I was going to ask the question, is there anything like that in the works as well? So, but I think we should wait to hear the result back from Danny's comment before we decide to do anything else.
That sounds like a good idea.
And I do think that even if we couldn't do some kind of like a library card necessarily thing, I do think that there would be some benefit even to like you mentioned that they mentioned like checkouts, whatever, some kind of contest along that lines to get students more familiarized with the library. Maybe it's like a scavenger hunt with the library, you know, resources or anything like that. I think
That's a good.
just to get students in the building would be helpful.
That's a really great idea. Okay, so I will forward the message on to Gail Elizabeth that we are going to look at the database integration with the schools and issuing of cards in that light. And then also looking at some other, like a teen scavenger hunt or a teen maybe check out like the punch card, like she was suggesting. Okay. Yes.
I had a question for Danny. Is that Washington County program that Clackamas County is looking at? Is that K-12 or just high school?
From what I understood, it was the whole school district in each member city is what
Oh.
we were told from Washington County, and they're already doing it. They've been doing it for at least a year or two from what I learned, so.
Okay. Okay, the second question is, when did the Library Advisory Board do its last needs assessment? And when will it do the next one? And could there be a copy provided? The only thing I thought on this one was that we did the calendar, where we went through and decided what items that we were going to be reviewing this year. Does anyone have any other thoughts on?
Yeah,
needs
I do, Susie.
Okay,
Before the transition to the new library director, we had done a poll that was the whole Canby area that we could get feedback on. And it was a survey that we had collected a lot of that information on, and COVID hit. Directors changed.
Yep.
And we don't have the results of all of that in front of us. I would like to go back to see if we can locate that information and kind of give it a comparison of the things that we need to keep in mind for COVID and things that have changed since then. But the flavor of what we needed was in that survey. So rather than start doing things from scratch, I think it's best for us to use that and see if we could continue to address the items that they had asked for originally.
okay. Danny, do you know if that exists somewhere?
I know that there is data. I have seen some of it, but I don't know how many years ago that was done. So it's
Okay.
something we can look for.
Okay.
Yes.
And I know we spoke in one of our other meetings about doing a new survey. And we probably just need to figure out how to facilitate this. And we thought we could do it online, or we could do it paper in the lobby like we did the last time. Kathleen?
Yeah, and we did that both online and in the paper, so people could turn them in here at the library, or they could just respond online and then combine the results. Yeah, and I believe we work with some of the city staff on that, on how to get
I
that.
would think to have it
It seems-
online and how to get the
Yeah.
results. Okay, would anyone like to spearhead this and work with the city and work with Danny? Any? volunteers in the.
I can work with Danny to try to gather what we had
Okay,
and then see if it's usable
sure.
and then maybe help fashion something to go out for the next time.
Okay.
I think for those of us who weren't here then, it would be interesting to see what the results were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
get a copy of that.
So, and I do think it's within the last 3 years. I mean, it was.
Yeah, it wasn't that.
Right at the transition of when you were coming on, that we were supposed to get those results. So I'm thinking maybe 4 months or so before Danny arrived might be when we were collecting it.
Mm.
So,
It seems about right.
okay. So if you
Yes, we
could, and then I can sit with you, we can see what's there. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And then the third thing Gail Elizabeth had was that she was, had a financial question about, and a question regarding the status of the nonprofit. I spoke with her offline on this and this is outside of our scope as a library advisory board. So I spoke with her personally on that one. The next issue I would like to bring up is a letter I received from Kathy Mulligan, who's a patron of the library and who's also here tonight. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
I hope everyone had a chance to read this letter. It was very well written and we really appreciate the concern that
Thank you.
some of the concerns you have here. So I guess I would like to bring up you had a question regarding communication and how can we improve and provide more library activity communication to the community. I know we're going to do the survey. We're going to look at the old survey we have and we want to do a new one, especially like you said, in light of changes that we all are presented with. And I know the other the ways of communication are through the city website and through the library website and through the newspaper. Like there's always like, this is going to be happening at this time. So does anyone else have anything they would like to add in this respect? And then you had a concern about the open and closed sign for the library.
So, and I honestly I have not looked, but there used to be little paper brochures that they folded in 3 that basically showed what was coming up the next month. Are we still doing that, Danny?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
And those are located at like the circulation desk still? Okay.
And the self-checkout, I think, too. Yeah. Okay.
Danny?
Yes.
I'm concerned that if people don't come in the library, they don't see that.
Right.
So my impetus is.
How do you get them
everybody walks
in?
Downtown like I do and talk to people and so forth. So I think somehow, and I'm not sure, somehow we need to get either to the schools, because those brochures could certainly go to the schools, PTAs, and I think Todos Juntos and Bridging Cultures would translate them. So, but I don't speak for them, but I would be willing to bet.
Okay,
I had a question.
sure.
Danny, what is online for the communication? Is it similar to the handout that they have here?
Sorry. Yes, all of our focus for our communication efforts are through social media and the website. We also make those things available in print in the buildings. So I anticipate, especially with the school district, since we have our first children's librarian on board in probably many, many years, he's really excited about building those relationships and expanding into the school district and working with the folks around the district to see how he can make those partnerships and communicate that stuff more broadly. So, yep.
Okay, and then regarding like the open sign, do we, I know we just post the hours.
I spoke with Jamie Stickle today. She's in charge of all of the building signage for the whole city. She does it for the whole city. And so we try to have parity between each of the buildings so it looks and feels the same. She's looking at a bilingual version right now. So
Okay,
that's something that we can very much do.
okay. Yes, that was a really good comment. Did the brochure to outside groups. That's a really good idea. And that way it gets people maybe coming in who wouldn't, like you said, normally are not around in the area. Under the topic of transparency, the item of it says, does the library director also hold the city IT director position? This is a question that has been redirected to the city administrator, because the city administrator is the library director is a city position. So this had to be directed in that light. So does anyone have any comments on that? I can't read the next section, sorry. And then I have a question, and then I'll read the next quote.
No, I'll wait till the next.
Okay,
I have one more input.
okay.
When I was working in Silverton, I would always attend their Chamber of Commerce meetings. And in the Chamber of Commerce was a collection of a lot of the people that were heads of these social type places. And the Chamber of Commerce always had handouts of the local items like the library, what they had going on.
Oh, that's
So
what we
the
do.
community would find out as a whole through that collectiveness of businesses and people in the community. So I would like us to, once we have this kind of laid out of where we want to reach out, the Chamber of Commerce, I think, would be one of the first places to see if it could be something they regularly bring up.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And Susie, just for that, Denise, Lois actually introduced Scott and I with Tracy, I believe. And so we're planning something with Tracy at the chamber to do a presentation here. So they come and visit in the morning. That's something that Scott's leading. So I'm taking my cues from him.
So the history behind this is that when I became president of the Friends, Susie was the treasurer at the time and found out that we were paying for the chamber bill and nobody was going. And so we really the Friends started getting actively involved with the chamber, and that made a huge difference. And so when the new library opened, we actually had they call them Good Morning Cambies. They're morning networking events that are, I prefer them because they're much more informal and casual. You get a chance to talk to people versus the luncheons where there's just a lot of dissemination of information. And that has been somewhat hit and miss since I left the Friends of the Library Board, but it's getting backed up to. And so I was the one who mentioned that it's been 5 years,
Yeah.
more than 5 years. It was early 2017 that
Wow.
we had the Friends of the Library hosted Good Morning Canby here in the Willamette Room because the Willamette Room is open. And then at the time, then people got a tour of the library as well, which is still always a good idea. So I went to Scott and said, isn't it time that we did this again? And so, yeah, Scott is definitely leading it. So basically the Friends, I volunteer for the Friends to pick up the tab for the coffee and donuts. But and I did forward it on to Gail that saying that this would be a good time for that to, we're past COVID now and
Yeah.
it's time to get back up, get back up on the horse and go riding off into the sunset again. So hopefully that will happen soon.
Thank you. It sounds good. Yes. Yes.
Just a tidbit, they will be looking for a new Chamber of Commerce person.
Yes.
She
Yes.
won't be meeting with her.
Yeah.
Whether
Oh, that's
you
right. I
or
just
not,
read that today.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
came out today and
It
I'm
did.
just,
Yeah. So that might delay things a little bit.
yes, so I'm just,
Sure they'll have an interim, somebody that. And then the next question was that many of the staff members have no idea what the Friends of the Library do, and they're always, the Friends of the Library are always in the library, obviously, because they, with the book garden, bookstore and everything. So I don't know. I don't know how that maybe is something that Danny, maybe you can address with the staff, because a lot of the funding comes from the Friends of the Library.
I don't have a specific response on this one,
Okay.
Other than we actively talk about Friends and the Foundation, their roles in the community and the library. So I'm going to venture a guess there was a misunderstanding or something, but this is acutely aware. Our staff are very
Yeah.
aware of these roles and the symbiotic relationship we have with each group. So
Yeah.
But this brings me back to something that I have mentioned to Danny and to Susie, is that I still don't understand what the foundation does. And, you know, one of the foundation board members is my neighbor. And so I do think that there's still a value in having a meeting with the Library Advisory Board, the Friends and the Foundation, so that everybody can understand what everybody else is doing. And then I just think that, you know, from a, you know, this is the retired HR person speaking here, but that to make sure that the staff and the volunteers, when they're oriented, that they get, you know, that they understand that that's part of, because you're right, we are in there. And I know that you know, most of the people that I've worked with know exactly who the Friends are and what they do, but I've definitely had some people like, who are you and what are you doing here? That type of thing too. I've gotten that response as well. So, but I do think that it's always a good time to kind of stop and double check what we're doing. And I am going to make the proposal based on other comments that we actually start a better orientation program for Library Advisory Board members, because I think this would address a lot of Kathleen's questions that she brought up as well.
Okay, maybe also, since there's a lot of new employees, that the Friends, since they're in, there's a lot of people coming and going, you know, that are volunteering to keep the book garden up and running. Maybe there could just be introductions, and that would help. I think that would help a lot. Like, I'm so-and-so, and this is what I do here. And every time they see a volunteer or something, and then that way it'll just make it a little easier.
So, and
Me too.
I will admit that I am guilty of not doing this, but Patty has requested, Patty is the book garden manager for the Friends, and she has requested that people wear their name tags. And
That
I
would
will
help,
admit
yeah.
that I'm very bad about doing it, because what happens is that I take it home and I lose it. But she has requested that the volunteers who are working in the book garden do that. I do think it helps a lot to say, hey, you know, I'm with the Friends and I'm a volunteer.
Okay, does anybody have anything they'd like to add? And then I think the last one is about the needs assessment and engaging the community and their needs. And this we talked about regarding the survey. I think that's going to help a lot. I wanted to add, I wrote some notes on this. If we could have, is there a way, like for library staff, if they have suggestions maybe that have come to them from patrons of the library, for them to submit suggestions, like, yeah, okay. I didn't know if you have, I'm sure,
that exists in the website already.
okay,
And we have a paper form, I believe, as well. It may not be used as often though.
okay. So like if a patron came in and spoke with someone, if they could, okay, they have a means to pass that suggestion on. Okay, perfect. And the other thing I had was to just promote what all the offerings that the library is currently doing. And we have the brochure, and then I think getting that out to the community and different organizations, that'll be a big plus in that respect.
So Danny, can we ask for like an action item on from Philip on like, does he have a plan to go out to the schools, et cetera, that type of thing? I mean, it would be good to kind of get a high level overview of Philip's plan to,
I can get
Engage the
some
schools.
information, but we have to be careful of the directing personnel here. So I
Right.
just want to make sure I'll work with Amber on that, but we can give you an idea of the tentative plan and we. can-
right. I'm just saying that's the kind
Okay.
of thing that to me
Yes.
would answer a whole lot of questions.
Yep.
Okay, Kathy, would you like to add anything, or?
No, I just learned what you guys do.
Yay. Some, yeah.
And I printed out the policies and
Yes.
the duties and all that jazz, and I'm just trying to educate.
Sure.
me So that when
It's very
people ask
vague.
me,
Mhm,
I'm not a gossiper,
right,
and I would like to come to the people who have
good,
the answers.
Yeah.
Or
try.
willing to work on the answers.
it sounds great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to move on, or Danny, do you have?
Sorry, Susie, for timeliness, Marissa has to leave at 6:15 and we have a presentation for the board.
Okay,
I don't have any information items, but I wanted to get to Kathleen's discussion item while staff are here.
so let's,
Is that
let's
okay with the
move,
board? Okay,
let's move,
thank you.
the next one, we'll do the collection maintenance, question next, and then we'll go through all the information items.
Okay, so, okay, thank you.
Very nice, thank you.
Yep.
Alrighty.
Yeah. Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes,
Okay, well, hello. My name is Marissa Ely. It recently changed, so ignore my crossing out. And this is Christopher.
hi,
We are here to present on one piece of collection maintenance, which is deselection, otherwise known as weeding. So the handout that you have right now, I'm going to go over bits and pieces of that. And then we'll have a little show and tell, and then you guys can ask questions from there.
thank you.
So item deselection or weeding is a fundamental element of collection maintenance, and it involves the removal of resources from the collection. I'm sure you guys have heard of what weeding is before. So librarians make data-driven decisions on deselection based on standard library practice. And by data-driven decisions, I mean, we generally run accurate circulation reports that we get from our network building office and everyone that works in there. So we tend to weed for duplicates. We tend to weed for grubby, disgusting items. We weed for low circulation, high circulation, outdated and misleading material, and a bunch of other things. So it's really important to remember that we, like many public libraries, are not a historic repository or archive. We simply don't have the space to keep everything that we buy, nor do we have the ability to buy everything that we want to buy. On average, the library adds about 7,400 items per year, and the total collection size is about 57,000 items, give or take, based on our building's physical space and the population that we serve. And another really fun statistic is that on average, about 15% of our collection is currently in the hands of library users. So that's about 9,000 items. And just so you guys can understand how much that is, that's about the size of our entire nonfiction collection on the adult side.
Wow.
So with all those numbers in mind, weeding or deselection is a really important part of our duties. The goal here with collection maintenance overall is to maintain a patron-driven, demand-driven, popular materials collection for this Canby community. And in being part of the LINK Consortium, Libraries in Clackamas County, we do leverage the power of the member libraries to locate and deliver a wide variety of materials to library users. So what that means basically is that LINK libraries do their best to fill in each other's gaps. If we don't have number 3 and 4 in a series, you know, Westland has 3 and 4 and vice versa. So we fill in each other's gaps in that way. And then I'm sure, as you know, the Friends of the Library do get a lot of our deselected materials. And they sell those, and so that money does get recycled and goes back into the library for programming and other things.
Sounds like you hit most of it.
I did, didn't I? So basically, I do have a piece, part of the policy on collection development and deselection specifically, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with, but feel free to take a look at that. And then I did want to also present to you guys, this is the crew manual, which we reference
Marissa,
in this.
Can I have you zip back real quick and just reference the number for the policy number?
The Canby Public Library Policy Manual, section 8.5.
Thank you.
Yes. And you can look at all of section 8, but 8.5 is that specifically. And then I do reference the crew manual in that handout there. This is for the most part, how we weed and why we weed. And you'll see that it's a pretty thick report. So we don't take weeding decisions and deselecting items and whatnot lightly. We don't just pick and choose what we feel like should be in the collection and get rid of it or keep it. There is a process that we go through. There's a bunch of different things that we have to keep in mind to make sure library staff are not biased in their decisions. And it does, and by it, I mean weeding and deselection, does take a great amount of time and a lot of different library staff. So we just really wanted you guys to know that a lot of thought goes into each decision that we make as far as why we weed certain materials. And it is a really important piece of our job, but it's only one piece. And again, as much as we wish that we had the space for all of the items that come out and, you know, we wish that we could buy all of the items out there, we simply can't. And so we work with what we have. And I think generally our collection is pretty robust. And, you know, in the certain sections of the library where we don't have certain items, we use the Link Consortium and other libraries to fill in those gaps.
And I'll just add that the crew manual is industry standard used throughout libraries, not just public libraries. It was developed by the Texas State Library, and it provides evaluative criteria across all the areas of the library, fiction and nonfiction, multimedia. Super useful. And obviously all of this builds and sets up a rubric and a framework for the selectors then to make the final decision. So it's not a mechanical process, although we use data to drive it.
Yeah, and if we weed, you know, a section for, and we end up getting rid of a fair amount of books, usually the selector will try to fill in those gaps with our collection as well, not just kind of, you know, making sure the other libraries have those books. We also try to fill in our own gaps based on what we weed and what we deselect.
And we build in mechanisms to do that where like we create a spreadsheet and say these items left, they were in this type of condition or this was the situation. Here is an alternative or the new edition. And then we did that throughout a number of broad areas in nonfiction last year.
Yeah, if certain items have a ridiculous amount of circulation, you know, we will buy a new copy of that, or we'll buy the new copy, you know, that the newer copy that comes out. Because we know that if a book is checked out a bunch, it's popular, it's probably going to be, you know, continue to be popular. And so we want to make sure we have a really good collection outside of what the Link libraries have, and then fill in the gaps that way. And then we did want to bring you some examples of grubby materials, just so you could see, but items like this that have water damage and tears, we generally try to discard. Items that are discolored or generally
Outdated in that
old.
case.
Yeah.
Children's DVDs and other regular DVDs, one of our very popular collections. We generally try to discard items. I don't know if you could see this, but this probably won't play in a player anymore. So that's what I mean by weeding for high circulation. You know, if this item has 200 circs, it's probably not going to be playable anymore. So we get rid of a bunch of items for different reasons, including grubbiness and nastiness and, you know, water damage. And I don't even know how you get this kind of damage, but that kind of damage. What?
It's a surfing book.
Yeah, yeah, maybe that's what we use it for. But anyway, those are just some of the items that we tend to discard. I mean, there's really no point in keeping these items, especially if we already have items that might be able to replace it. Or we already have, you know, a large number of items about that specific topic in the collection. So that's the bulk of our spiel, but we wanted to be here to answer questions as well.
I have a multitude of questions. I will try to restrict myself. The first one is that of the books that I've acquired at very low prices from the Friends, I began to notice the publication dates. And like 2017, 2018, 2020, 21, and 22. And I picked these up in 22. And I was trying to figure out how a brand new book that has gone through all the expense and all the time and labor of putting it on the shelf was yanked so quickly. And I brought some bags of books that I picked up, and I've got 2 more at home of those large bags. So several $1,000s or at least $1,000 worth of books that are in good condition. And I mean, I have books on my personal library that are over 50 years old, so that, you know, I'm not using that as the guide for when you, how long you keep them. But I do have concerns about who's being pulled, and I get the series thing. So the service angle of the district for all the people in each community. You have, and I'm really aware of this because I'm at the 3/4 of a century mark. So you get people who don't have the mobility or don't have the means or don't maybe have the budget to do a lot of high tech. So some of us have the access and some do not. And when they come to their local library, because they're shopping next door at First, and they're looking for something they can take home and read, and they're trying to follow a series, they have to have, they're either going to come to the information desk in the librarians and ask, how can I get this book? How can I get the rest of this series? So I'm thinking about the emphasis on service. And as a person of the Pacific Northwest who follows the news a lot, and I've been accused of being way political and way addicted to news of what's going on in the country. There's nobody in this part of the country or on either of the 2 coasts. This is used nationwide. Texas. Texas immediately raises concerns for me because of the news stories about what's going on with banning books. And you don't have to ban a book to get rid of it.
This is the state library of Texas.
I could see that. I'm literate. I see that it says the State Library of Texas. Okay, of all the states, well, there's a handful. That one, my red flag goes up and says, okay, so I don't see any criteria here. I see a lot of subjectivity. I understand about pulling books that are ruined, but who decides what has no discernible literary or scientific merit? This country right now is in a wash with anti-science and anti-literature and anti-history and truth. So my question is, this is the only outfit in the entire country that has got a pattern for how you go about this? And this is...
It's the standard that's advocated by the American Library Association as well.
Okay, well, I have no qualms about questioning everybody, because I have really grave concerns. If I lay out the books that are in those bags, you'll see what I'm talking about. They aren't marked up, they aren't banged up, they aren't old, and they are by award-winning authors. They have, I understand that we are not a museum, but the last time I checked, Dewey Decimal had a section on history. And Canby used to have, I don't know now, I haven't been back in the dark corner on the far wall to see if some of the Native American books that were donated, I know because I donated one, to provide information about the people whose homeland this still is. And so that kind of thing, our country doesn't have a really good reputation and history of respect and honor for the people who were here when the invasion from the east swept into the continent. So my concern is, because as you know, there's I forget what the slang term for it is. We're not supposed to be teaching certain things. We're not supposed to be even talking about certain things. This pertains to schools. But it's also coming to my attention through Oregon Public Broadcasting, through their news outlet, that, you know, this stuff is going on in Oregon too. So that's my question, because who is the discerner of literary and scientific merit? And who decides that a book is a much better one? Does the I'm not aware of the American Library Association sending out a list of such individual books.
That's correct. I don't believe there is a list.
Okay, so who decides? You know, I'm of a totally different age group. Got great grandkids, to give you a hint, okay? So my concern is, I understand from, I've worked in about half a dozen different professions, and including running my own business as a result of that. The knowledge that can be easily erased when you just move materials out, because your perspective is, how do I say it without being offensive?
Guided?
Yeah, who guides it?
Yeah.
Who guides it? And experience, life experiences, professional experiences. In other words, I have worked with the monocular vision approach in science and in land management, certainly in ranching, and in my own family and farming. So I understand that it is sometimes it's scary to look at a wide spectrum of possibilities. And that's how you choose the books that are on the shelves, because you really, well, I keep smacking up against. I've monopolized enough.
So I have something I want to add here. Marissa, the one thing that you forgot to add is the fact that when new books come out, often because of demand, you have to buy multiple copies. And after the demand has gone down, you send those extra copies to the friends, which is why we can put them off. So some of those books are the library bought multiple copies because that was there are rules about once somebody holds, you have to buy more books, right?
I was going to mention that
For
too.
5 holds, you have to buy 1 copy. And then obviously if you have an exorbitant amount of holds, you buy more copies. So like, I'm thinking Michelle Obama's Becoming, I think we ended up with 8 copies.
And we went down to, because I do history and biography in the book garden. We actually sold several of them because we kept it at 2 in the bookstore, because that's about, we have limited space too. So there might have been some in the $4 for $1 category, because we wanted to give people in Canby the opportunity to buy them before we sent them off to Better World, that type of thing. So there's their level of discretion, and then they come to the friends, and we have to do our level of discretion as well. And we have limited space and resources as well. So there's multiple levels going on here. But I think that a lot of the stuff that we get is the newer stuff is multiple copies. When the demand goes down and they can tell their usage reports, then they come to the Friends and then we put them out too. So.
And the bulk of circulation on newer material is within the first 6 to 9 months.
And then it
And then
completely
it's
drops.
like,
Okay,
the
that's
rest of
about
its
the
lifetime,
lifespan
it's
of it.
not like we yielded much. Now, I think in the case of the Obama book, one of those, there may be 2 or 3 copies in nonfiction, and then the residual went to you. And then also, I think we have 2 different types of collections, because we have the Lucky Day collection and we also have the new collection. And
Yeah.
sometimes there are duplicated materials in those.
Yes.
So that at least might be one piece of your questions, that's what happens to some of the materials.
Yes.
I
And
probably should explain, my library experience goes back to working at Grant Street School as a 6th grader and volunteer in that library, and then has moved since then. So a lot of volunteering. And my question is, because I'm also a taxpayer, both the city and the county. And so I'm running my own business and understanding about cash in, cash out, and investment in assets. And then letting those assets go. Okay, so economically, when you're thinking about, because when I was on LDAC for a number of years, one of the things that repeatedly came up was our rate for libraries is too low, but it was what passed back in 2008. So the question, this is the economic question of how do you raise that rate, and how do you go to the taxpayers and tell them they need to pay more in their taxes on their properties to support the library. And then you have 4 pages of books, relatively new, and $1,000 worth of books that you paid $100 for, maybe. So I'm guessing there's no audit on this kind of thing. But you do understand that trying to persuade the population to support a library with taxes, and we support it with our county and, in my case, and city general fund taxes, and then with the library taxes, both unincorporated area and city. So this is alarming to see this happening, because what I hear you saying is there are so many damaged books in lousy condition. There are so many, factually inaccurate books that wound up on in the library. And again, it's a question of where's the criteria for that? And then there's all these new books that replace them better. And I love that it's called trivial, for no discernible literary or scientific merit. And I don't see any examples of that. And then irrelevant to the needs and interest of the library's community. And without doing that survey, without asking people, we are relying on.
I think on the circulation.
We rely on
reports.
the use of the materials,
Right.
right?
I will say
How many times are they checked out?
the majority of
that's it.
our decisions are based on the community and what they check out and what they want and what they're telling us they want more of or want less of.
Okay,
I mean, it really comes down to that
and how do they tell you what they want?
circulation statistics.
No, okay, but if it's not on the shelf, they don't necessarily know that that's what they'd like. And if they don't communicate that to you, how do you know?
Because they have to get it from another library.
Or in
Place a
library loan, yeah.
Or interlibrary loan,
Okay.
exactly.
So perhaps one of the things we really need to look at as a board is how do we make it more open for the people, the patrons of the library to express their likes and dislikes. And to make that very clear.
We also have a purchase request form,
Mhm.
so people can request items to be purchased. So you can request to be purchased.
Okay,
We can look for it in another library in our system, or we can look for it throughout the country at another library.
and
bring it in.
yeah, my sister did interlibrary loan, so I'm familiar with the different ways to get books from elsewhere, including universities and everything like that. My main thing is, how is that widely known in the general public? Is it something we publicize? in
I
any
just
way?
want to say for the record that this is not a new process for Canby. This policy was adopted years ago by the council and this board recommended it. So I want to make sure that we're all looking at this the same way. The city manager is tasked with oversight of operations. So this
Mhm.
actually falls explicitly under the city charter for the city administrator to determine how the work happens. This is something that we want to make sure is absolutely transparent, which is why I included it in the city council bi-monthly report. But also, I want to make sure that we're on the same page. We haven't been able to do a lot of this work over the last few years because of COVID.
Mhm.
And so we are getting ourselves back to where we need to be for routine maintenance. And so all of those things considered with things that we do, the policy as it states today gives the city administrator the authority to have staff use professional standards, which is what they just shared,
And that's what this is.
and including the industry standard that our national professional organization recommends, which
Mhm.
is the Texas State Libraries Crew Manual. You can probably check with almost every library in the state of Oregon, if not most of the country. They all use the same manual. So
And this is the language.
this is all taken directly from that, but this is a snapshot of the work staff do. We have professional librarians who are degreed, who have master's degrees in library and information science who do this work. And then we work with our selectors and we work as a team to decide, based on the circulation data, based on some of the must-use standards here, as well as the other pieces, do these things have relevance in our collections still based on the amount of space we have? We have a limited amount of linear square feet in the building. And so it's important, especially because we want our customers to have these items. We want items out. If it's always on the shelf, no one's using it.
Mhm.
So like Christopher said, with almost 9,000 items currently out, that represents a huge amount of space that we can't buy for because we still have those items. So I just wanted to make sure on a whole that that's where we're at.
Okay, does everybody understand why I am concerned?
I'm
And-
sorry, Susie, Marissa needs to step out.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa. I appreciate your.
you know, nobody shares the concerns. Okay, I'm a minority of one.
I have shared your concerns. One time I came in, I bought a book from I felt the same way you did. It was a brand new book. It had not been used. And I said, is this really something you're selling? And the librarian helping me said, of course, no one has checked it out in 2 years. You're the first person who showed any interest. And it was like a light bulb went off and I went, oh, they don't need to keep that on the shelf. I ended up getting a great book. It was 50 cents that day. Anyway,
Mhm.
but I have had the same feelings, but that really was very helpful for me to understand that there's a process and it feels like something we can trust in. And
Mhm.
so
I didn't have any questions because I have been in the library when they were doing the culling and I have talked to the librarians who are doing the culling and I see the decisions that are being made. And I have worked when several years ago, we were given a grant to update children's books and I was working with Peggy at the time. And it was like a lot of the books had to be replaced because when children love on books, they love on them. And so I had no questions because I have been in there and also, so what they don't say is that the friend saves the library a lot of time because they do the culling and then we figure out what we can sell, what we can't sell, what goes on to Better World, that type of thing as well. So I had no questions because I've been there and I've seen what they have done. So
are you worried about who's making the decision about what is factually inaccurate? That's been a big topic in the news lately. And is that kind of what's driving your concern?
The language of the musty.
Right, factually inaccurate. I heard you
Is-
mention that, but also Who decides whether it's discernibly literary or scientifically valuable? Is that kind of?
Right, it depends on your background, so.
It does.
What I'm understanding is that as you come through as a librarian, through your master's program, whoops, sorry, not a comment. Then this is what is being taught, this is what is being put out as, okay? So, my concerns and my not being able to understand why, it isn't as though I've seen, okay. I guess we just have to say my personal experience has been very interesting. Very in regards to libraries and I know we're doing catch up on all sorts of things and it is great to see a list of subjective methods for doing this work. And maybe everybody's just going to have to live with this one person who says that language is questionable.
May I say something, Kathleen?
Sure.
I would really like you to look at the rest of the crew manual, and I can make sure that we can either get you a copy or I can get you the URL to get there. Because I think as you see how it's dealt with granularly, I think that musty piece is one thing, but each of the subject areas and each of the genres of materials
Yes.
are dealt with at a depth. And there's narrative description of how one can make the best decision possible.
Okay.
Do we always make the best decision? We do our best to make the best decision, but in some cases, something will go one direction or the other. That's the nature of this work. It's much less science, I will say that. But I think once you see the rest of the narrative, it might be more helpful for you, especially when you're talking about a historic collection or even a classic fiction. And you know, another thing is we try to make workarounds so that we will retain things that may not get a lot of circulation, but we know that there is lasting interest and at some level a desire for, even if they're not circulating. So what we've done is there's even we put it in young adult because it tends to be used mostly by students. But we take classics that are no longer circulating in our regular collection and we move them in there as a classic that will be retained. Same thing with Oregon Heritage. There's a whole section of Oregon Heritage materials. Those were excluded from any of the work that we were doing.
Okay.
That's good. You said that dark corner and you're absolutely right. It's in the back there and that's where that material is. And that's a class of material that we didn't even enter into the process. It wasn't even present. Now, it's possible one came back rain wet and moldy and we had to get rid of it, but that wasn't part of the use-based selection.
Not a subjective.
In that case.
Yeah.
So, but I'm happy to help provide some of these things to you if you'd like to see them.
I would like to read the crew, the manual.
Yeah.
And get a better grasp of what, because this misleading.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's, I don't want to take up any more time because
Yes.
we've got about 2 minutes.
Yeah, so Kathleen, I would like to propose that we put as an action item that you receive the manual from Christopher and you look through it or read, you know, and then you can report to us on our next meeting,
Okay.
you know, something that you may have, you know, learned. You know, in reference from that I would be very interesting.
Hopefully, but I
Yes.
will learn something. Yes.
No, you will.
We'll learn quite a lot, I'm guessing. This was an eye opener.
Yeah,
This was.
thank you. Thank you for bringing up the points and they're very well received.
Susie, can I ask a couple?
Sure.
Thank you. Christopher, would you have a rough estimate of what percentage of our annual deselection materials are children's books? Because Lois makes an excellent point. Those are probably the ones that get trashed most quickly.
Unfortunately, I can't even make a guess.
Okay. That's reasonable. No,
Yeah,
I get
this has been, you know, because, and I think this has been done across the board. And basically my role in a lot of this is taking the records that come from our network and then parsing them in a way where we can clearly see how many times they've circulated and the circulation dates. So that would be, I mean, we might be able to come up with other figures for you.
I don't think it would be a valuable use of your time. The second question is, at the high school where I work, which is why we're dressed in jerseys today, because it's
Hey, all right.
Jersey Day. Yeah, and I tried to dress up in New Jersey attire, but
Oh, good try.
I don't have any more of those polo shirts. Our library has been the subject of a number of requests to pull materials, particularly of interest to our students of color and LGBT students. Does our city library field those same requests?
I'll respond to that. Chris, if there is a request for removal or banning of any type, that process also is explicit in our policy that's approved by council, recommended by this board. And that actually excludes staff completely. And so if we receive one, it doesn't matter what the topic, and we have not received anything official in the 2.5 years I've been here now, those go straight to this board for review and action. The staff have no part of that.
Yeah, I haven't seen one in 4 years, so.
We're seeing a lot more of that nationally, but we have not seen any formal requests. One came upstairs to the city administrator several months ago, and he explained to the person, he happened to be there. This is our process. The book went back downstairs and went on the shelf, and the person never submitted a request for review. So, yes.
So finally, are you comfortable saying that one or another side's political agenda does not factor into any of these decisions?
I think
Because
that,
I think maybe that might get at some of the concerns that you're having is
and I think that was what we try to get at when we talk about patron driven. Our collection is, as you said, we show what is of interest to our community by what is circulating, and we get requests for. So that is done, and when we do that with the statistics that we're taking, that's done without a bias to any content. It's done to how the material is being used. And when we purchase materials across the board from a vendor of record that has material on all sides of the spectrum. And we try to buy what we can for the size of our community. We aren't the Library of Congress, so we don't buy everything, but we buy a wide breadth on any subject of what we're able to afford. And that's what goes into the collection. And then you can also imagine if the patrons are requesting a certain type of material, then that's added in addition to what we've already purchased. So I think we do our best to remove the bias from the collection building by having that broad base and then letting the users use the material as they will. It probably went too far around it rather than giving you we're not buying just this or just that, because that's not, we aren't, it's not the way it works.
That's the flip side of this entire process that I think we try to major in is what are we adding to our collection all the time? And those things come through professional standards that we use as well. We use selector networks across the country. We have professional resources that recommend books across every genre, discipline, subject. And I hate to use this phrase, but libraries are for all, but we have something to offend everyone too. That's a good library has something on everything. So that kind of goes with that phrase, a book for everyone, everyone for a book kind of thing. And so we certainly select for all.
Thank you. Okay, so we're at our meeting time limit, but I would like to just go back up to the information items. That's okay. And then Denise, you're welcome to step out at any time. I know you have a date. So if we could just briefly go over the council liaison report, Christopher.
Susie, I don't know how much time we have before we resume.
Okay.
Another board may need to pick it up, so.
Okay.
I'll just say, I was going to say more, but I can wait a month on this. But I am reassigned as the Library Advisory Board liaison. So I requested that and
Oh, good.
granted. We did that at our last meeting, and I was going to share with you what all of the counselors' meetings and commissions were. But That is not urgent.
Signed again.
Like, no, I'm continuing.
Yes.
In the library advisory. board
Thank
role.
you, thank you. Yes, and then we can, if you wouldn't mind, that would be great to hear
Sure,
all
we
the
can do
others
that.
at the next meeting.
Yep, I can
Okay,
do that then.
thank you. On my board chair report I sent out, it was pretty brief.
Yep.
And an LDAC,
LDAC is meeting next Monday, the
Okay.
23rd at 7 PM in Oregon City at the Development Services Building.
oh, great,
If anybody wants to join us, give me a call and I will
okay.
tell you where to go, or Daniel over here.
In more ways than one.
It's on the Clackamas County website if you're curious.
But I'm excited to go. And they have a couple topics that they're gonna go over. Nothing's in stone yet, so I'll bring back a report.
Okay. Sounds good. Luke, did you have?
Nothing much on my end. I'm hoping to meet with Karen and Philip, hopefully by the time of next meeting, and then have more,
Okay,
future plans by then.
sounds good. Danny
I don't have anything
Okay.
additional. Thank you.
and then Lois.
I sent mine out in writing.
Okay, does anyone have any questions regarding any of the items that were sent out, the reports that were sent out? Okay, all right. Well, I have a few action items that I think we've talked about all of them. And then our next meeting is February 21st. The one action item I have on that one is that Jessica is going to meet with Danny in the next upcoming month and to discuss.
And we may need to do a flip flop on the schedule. I got the city's budget document just last week and it's not starting till March now, the process. So
Okay.
it's almost a month out from what we did last year. So
Okay.
we can talk, Jessica, but we might need to rotate the schedule a little.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Okay, so I would like to adjourn this meeting at 6 minutes past our normal time.
Thanks, Lois.
Second.
Everybody in favor?
Who was the
Thank you.
second? Oh, Denise. Okay. Thank you.
I think Denise was the first and second.
First or second.